I don't want to bitch and moan about how much work I have on at the moment because I'm always grateful for work. There's nothing worse as a freelancer than having no work. But I've been stacked for the last 3 weeks. This busy period's culminated in me having to do a prop shop for 8 different shoots, create backgrounds for them, and all of this general hoo-ha that goes on to create a shoot, which is a great deal of work. It also got me thinking as to how important these things are. So in this week's vlog, we're going to go through props and backgrounds and their importance in food photography. But it's also going to be of use to those in different fields, just change props to stylists and wardrobe, whatever it may be. It's relevant, it's incredibly relevant. But before any of this, I need to go to the gym because when I don't sleep enough, I have to exercise more to counteract my fatigue being. So gym first, then prop. Been to the gym, feeling much better, but I need to set the scene for a predicament I just put myself in. So I go to a particular type of gym. It's a bit of a spit and sawdust gym. I would say the clientele on average have bigger arms than I have a waist. I am the anomaly in this gym, but I like it because it lets me work out how I want to work out and it's got really good kit. It's also 100 meters down the road for me, which is pretty convenient. Now I'm aware that I don't fit in this gym and that I'm not their, general clientele. However, I like to think I'd do my best. But today, after I'd soaked through my first shirt and it was so soaked in sweat that it was basically a new layer of skin, I pulled my second shirt out, took my top off, pulled my beard up, made sure I looked manly, put my new top on, and then I realised I'd got Holly's Mummasaurus pajama t-shirt. So I've just done the rest of my workshop wearing this, trying to style it out like it was entirely intentional. But before I do the rest of this video, I'm going to change it because I'm not sure it sets the right tone. So as I'm sure you can imagine, I get asked by a lot of people to review their work, look at their work, tell them how to improve, that sort of thing. And I'd say this goes for almost all forms of photography, whether you're shooting models, you're shooting e-commerce, product, or food like I do. There are several things that make a good photograph, and as photographers, we don't focus on the main one. So for me to make a good photograph, number one, you have to have great content. And in terms of content, that's subject matter, the perspective that you're showing the subject matter in, all of the things which are the idea. That is the most important item. Number two, once you've got the sort of bones of the body and you need to flesh it out a bit. And to flesh it out, we're going to use props. Now this could be props, it could be a location, it could be wardrobe, but it's how you dress up the shot. If you're a street photographer, it might be choosing a particular location to shoot in where the aesthetic is just so. Now I recently had a comment on Instagram saying, which filter did you use to get that vintage look on one of my images? The image didn't have a filter. I'd adjusted the blacks, the whites, the clarity, the texture and the sharpness, and a slight white balance fix. The thing which made it look like a vintage photograph was the choice of props. The choice of props and the subject matter were far more important than the camera, the lens, the camera settings, the lights, and the lighting setup. Now, as photographers, we get really bogged down in the techie side of things. We want to talk about f-stops, t-scores on lights, white balance, consistency, all these things which don't really matter. And in order to progress past that sort of club level of photography, you need to really get in depth into your subjects. And this is why I'm such an advocate of having a niche. Because to be good at something, you have to truly understand it, and you have to be able to build on this image. So for me, when I'm shooting food, it's not just about the lighting and the camera and the lens. That's the icing on the cake. The cool lighting setup, doing something which other people might not be able to do or have to go, well, how on earth did they do that? That's cool, but it is the icing on top of the cake. The important bit is the food. Does the food look good? Do the props look good? Bad props will ruin good food. It's really important that everything is dressed up together. So I'm going to go through with you now how I go from brief to shoot and how I source the props, the backgrounds, and make sure everything looks exactly how it should to achieve the shot that we want. Now I'm currently on a shopping job for 3 different clients for 8 different shoots, and I've got to supply all the backgrounds, the props for the food that they want shooting. So I'm going to sort of go through what I'm doing with you. Come with me. So I have a load of these backgrounds around the studio that I've built. They're the right aspect ratio for my particular camera choice. The colors and highlights suit my particular sensor. They're basically tailor-made for me to do what I want to do without having to make any adjustments by buying off the peg ones, which kind of saves me time. But more importantly, it's just exactly what I need for my clients. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go through with you how I take these prop bags and my backgrounds, create the background, create the prop selection to give the correct aesthetic and the right look for a shoot. Now down here, I've got about £2,000 to £3,000 worth of props. And these are for a few different shoots and a few different clients. I've also got some bleach in here because I love bleaching everything. But these have been carefully selected and curated. I have spent 3 days shopping for these. Nothing in these bags and boxes is here by accident or coincidence. I will spend longer on this prop sourcing than I will spend on any photograph taking. And it goes a bit deeper than that. It's not just the props. It's also the backgrounds. I design and make my own backgrounds now as well because I was having real issues finding ones which were exactly as I wanted. But back to the props. We have my selections made here. I was just waiting on this. I had to buy everything brand new, which is a bit of a pain when looking for vintage stuff, but I'm particularly pleased with this cutlery that's just arrived, just in time to be sent off. It's got that really nice battered old look to it, but it's new, which means I can buy it in bulk, which is what I needed for this particular job. So these props here, and then I think I've covered them in a blanket down here. These props down here are all being posted off tomorrow. Today? No, let's be realistic. Tomorrow. And then if you're wondering what these tubes are, they are for my lovely new backgrounds that I'm selling. However, these are the wrong ones. I ordered the wrong size because I'm a dimwit. But the right ones are hiding behind the wall at the back of the studio. And these, the shop may be live tomorrow, which is very exciting and also terrifying because I always have the fear that something will go horrendously wrong. But there we go. They're ready. They're here. They're good to go. Now, since starting recording, this is actually last week's vlog. Sorry about that. This big old computer here decided it wanted to live no more. So it's now become a television to play old classic cycling films on. I love cycling. I especially love, and this is probably a bit controversial, the 1990s and early 2000s where everyone was doped off their eyeballs and the sport was just mental because they were all superhumans. Anyway, I digress. Because of that, I've had to buy a new computer. And here he is. It's nothing special. It's just a Mac Mini. It costs the same secondhand as fixing this, which was going to die again anyway because it's been turned on for 8 years pretty much continuously. Anyway, this brings in a tangent and an important little bit of information. I've been suffering, as I'm sure most of you have, with Adobe Lightroom's horrendous performance. So I'm building my new archive in Capture One. So it's a learning process. Once I've mastered it, come on, focus, Mr. Camera. Once I've mastered it, I'm going to show you exactly how I've done it. Hopefully it's been a success. And this is all mirroring to Backblaze. I pop a link to Backblaze. It's not an affiliate thing. I don't get paid for it. I just think it is the best bang for buck. Especially if, like me, you can daisy chain 20 terabytes of hard drives to it. Anyway, so I'm learning about this here. And as you can potentially see, prior to that, I was trying to make Lightroom work better, but it turns out it's just horrendous. So here's my new desk setup kind of thing. It's not finished. It's now, I had finished it. And then obviously new computers, new setup, it's all changed. So this is kind of arts and crafts time. Got my wood, sponges, my paintbrushes in my coffee tin. Got the paints out that I need, some textured sprays. I'll sort of keep all my painty stuff in these. Somebody was going to put these in the tip. They're like ready for a skip, so I salvaged them. And I quite like them. Anyway, I digress again. I'm a bit tangenty this week. We're going to make this, and then I'm going to go through how to select the props for your food and your background.
So I'm just stopping there for now. Just added a bit more texture to it because it wasn't quite coming through. Now these are made in a very different way to if I was actually just going to use them directly for photography. These are going to be duplicated and printed. And one of the big issues with printing is the colour white. Now I want some whites in there, but anything pure white prints as blank. So it's a bit of a tricky game to play, but we'll get there. This black stuff here won't stay black. It's a texture. It's actually there we go. Stone wool textured finish. I have no idea what you'd actually want to use it for in real life. So real life, this is my life. But for this here, I use it to create texture, which I'm then going to paint over the next layer. So this is all like the base coat. And after this, I'm going to add the contrast, as it were, the highlights predominantly, which can go over the black, hopefully covering it enough and not wasting the board. So when looking at backgrounds, this might seem like a bit of an odd statement to make, but if you're going to have one and only one, for food particularly, go for blue. And the reason for this is there's no food which is going to sort of blend into it. Everything will contrast. The greens, the yellows, the reds. There's not that many blues. So this is like your staple you must have. And then what I do in post-production when I want this texture but not the blue, I go into the HSL slider, and because there's no blue food, hence why we have blue gloves and plasters in food, you just desaturate it and it looks really cool. But what I'm going to do now is make a background for a client. This is a brief I've got. And what I do is I make them as a physical item first, then I copy them. I have a bit of it's a bit top secret, a strategy for copying them so they then look really good on paper, as this one here does. So I've planned this pretty badly. I did messy work when I need to be a hand model, so I've got painty hands. So I'm going to try not to get my hands in here too much because no one wants to see my disgusting painty hands. This is a prop selection. Now, context is key here. So this is for a company who has red in their logo. So we cannot have any red within these props because it will clash when they do their ad campaigns. So the first thing I've done is come up with a color palette range. And this is the things which will work together to give them the style and the look that they want. And that's a very important starting point. So you'll notice that all of the hues in here, all the color palette, it's all very similar and it's all very homogeneous. We've got a bit of red on the stopper in there, but that's going to come off. But apart from that, everything here goes together. And it's also very versatile, which is key for this particular sourcing. These props are going to be used in many different ways, so they need to be very versatile. Sometimes we're getting a specific prop for a specific job, and that's all there is to it. Now this is my prop store. It seems to be moving because there's not actually space here for it. But we have all sorts of different bits and pieces. And as soon as we decide that we're taking a photograph, before we go and find the food, we find the props. We make sure that we can dress the shot correctly. Sometimes it means using props that we already have. Other times it means renting them. And sometimes we have to go out and buy, source, find, beg, steal and borrow. But I have a good selection of random little bits in here which help make my life that little bit easier. Right down to having the right glassware. Got a nice selection of all sorts of different glasses. So if you're sitting there thinking, I need this light or this lens, or I need to learn this technique or this post-production, before you worry about any of that, this is where you should be spending your time. Now, if you're not a food photographer, if you're a still life person, it might be in getting the right backgrounds, the right styling. If you're a fashion photographer, a portrait photographer, there is so much out there. This Buzz Lightyear mug shouldn't be there. Hang on. There's so much out there which you should be prioritizing over the photography and camera gear. Mine's a bit more ISO though, eh? I've just got in, it's absolutely freezing, which is why I'm wearing a coat, a Christmas jumper, a t-shirt and a vest, which you didn't need to know about. I've been on a bit of a tangent on this one. The whole week's gone belly up, as I think it did last time as well, but this is like a week late vlog anyway. But I want to get back to the point that I was talking about, which is the props and all the things that surround photography. Because there seems to be this common misconception that to be a good photographer, you have to study photography. And obviously there's an amount of truth to that, but it isn't the full story.
Yes, you need to learn photography, and yes, it's important that you know how a camera works, how a lens works, and how lights work. But what's more important than this is that you have an understanding of your subject. And that'll make you a far better photographer than being good with a camera. And I know you're thinking, well, you have to be able to do these things with a camera to achieve, particular things. It doesn't matter how good your images are from a photography point of view. If the subject matter is poor, and if your understanding of style, styling, and everything which creates that subject is just not very good, you're not going to take good photographs. That's why there's people being paid to shoot campaigns with their iPhones or whatever smartphone you've got. It's because they understand what's important. There are so many people out there with a phone on Instagram who are better photographers than us because they understand exactly what they're doing and what they're trying to portray. And you'll see people in the forums going, yeah, I can't believe they got paid $20,000 to shoot a campaign on an iPhone. These influencers, whatever it may be, they're just ruining the industry, and they're not. They've got a great grasp on it. They've taken technology and gone, with this phone, everything's automated. All I need to understand is what looks good, what my market wants, and how to portray that. And they're winning. And I think it's really important that those of us like myself who have all this kit in the background, we take that time to go, this is all important because it lets me portray my view of the world in a particular style, but this isn't what's going to make me my money. The thing which is going to make me a good professional is understanding photography and how it relates to my subject. So being able to go, for me to make a great food photograph, what makes a good food photograph? It's not f-stops, it's not lighting, it's the styling, it's the food, it's the context, it's the way that I portray it all in an image. All of this stuff behind me here is just like the 5% at the top which makes the image perfect. Everything else is the important part.